According to the CUNY website, the system's 25,000 faculty and staff provide high-quality, accessible education to more than 269,000 degree credit students and 247,000 adult continuing and professional education students at 24 campuses across the city. In fact, it's a city within the city, you could say. But CUNY's last contract with all those educators ended in 2010, and they haven't had a raise since 2009. A situation faculty members have now decided must change. After a massive protest in early November and 50 arrests, CUNY did offer a new contract, but it was rejected by the Professional Staff Congress, or PSC, the union that represents CUNY's faculty and staff.
Well, now 3 officers of the PSC, all educators themselves, are here to tell us what they feel is a livable wage and what they need to give students a better education. Alex Vitale is a sociology professor at Brooklyn College and the PSC's vice president for senior colleges. Welcome back to BK Live, sir. And Nivedita Majumdar is a teacher of English at John Jay College, and she's the PSC's secretary. Thanks for being here. And we also want to welcome the treasurer, Sharon Persinger. She teaches math and computer science at the Bronx Community College.
Okay. Exciting times that we are living in. Mr. Vitale, before we get to talk about the vote to strike, can you sort of, let our viewers know what's going on and give us an overview of the issue at hand?
Well, as you said at the opening, we've been over 5 years without a contract now. We're the only state workers, essentially, without a contract. CUNY is funded primarily by the state, but also by the city, and it's really a roadblock with the state more than anything else that has held up the contract. You mentioned that CUNY had made an offer. It was 6% over 6 years, which is 4, 5, 6% less than what all other state workers got for that same time period. And so faculty and professional staff at CUNY are hurting. Everyone from janitors to full professors have been without raises and without a contract for just way too long.
So I'm going to go to you. You're the treasurer, yes, and you got the math degrees. So, Professor, I'm asking about that contract that was rejected, or the proposal. It would essentially, after that number of years, leave the bargaining on your end below the inflation rate. So you guys said it was tantamount to a pay cut.
So a 6% offer over that period, when nationally inflation has run around 8 to 9% for that period. But in New York City, we all know how much more rent costs in particular have gone up. So there's some estimates that the inflation rate in New York City in that period is more like 20%. We have faculty who are considering leaving. Faculty are actually looking for jobs at other places. Faculty who have left. We have department chairs who tell us that with the salaries that they can offer, they can't hire. So this refusal to get us a contract that actually increases our salaries and gives us better working conditions, it's on the verge of really diminishing the quality of the education that we can offer.
I think we all have this perception of that ivory tower thing, that you're a professor, you sit in this office lined with books in your leather chair, like sitting back, looking at the news and drawing up plans to teach. But what are the conditions really like? What is it like to work in the CUNY system now?
It is not as it should be. One thing we should know is that 75% of city students who graduate from New York City schools attend CUNY. And of that, more than 50% of our students have household income of less than $30,000. Right. And overwhelming numbers are students of color. So this is the population we are serving. And when they do not give us the raises that we deserve, or they do not give us the kind of working conditions that we deserve, they're actually attacking the populations we serve. So that is something that we need to remember. What is it like to work when you're not sure where your next paycheck is coming from, which would allow you to make rent? Can you focus on your teaching? I think not, right? Our teaching load is so high that we cannot give the kind of attention that we need to give, especially to CUNY students who are negotiating family responsibilities, work responsibilities. Right. So overall, the conditions are not good, and we deserve better. Our students deserve better.
Okay, so we've established what the conditions are, but how did we sort of get to this point? You know, who's to blame, or what legislation or lack of legislation? You know, how did we get into this predicament?
Well, CUNY has really sustained chronic underfunding for so many years. And part of the crux of the logjam on the contract is the governor has said, if you want to offer the faculty more money, well, I guess that would be okay, but you have to take it out of the operating budget. Well, we're now talking about an amount of money so huge that you would have to start closing down campuses in order to finance the contract, because the underfunding has been so profound for so long. So the Fiscal Policy Institute, for instance, has done a lot of research that shows just year after year the funding by the state has been withdrawn and replaced with tuition increases and budget cuts. What happens sometimes is they increase tuition on students on the promise that that'll go to the university, and then they just cut funding for the university, and it's essentially a tax on our students that goes into the general fund.
Yeah, it's like using your credit card to pay your credit card sort of thing. So we know that $150 billion, $1.5 billion was the cut, and then you said they raised the price of tuition by like $300 a year. So they're trying to even things out, but the money is sort of, it's a shell game. So to that end, where is the money going? Do you have any idea?
Sure. Well, first of all, enrollments are way up. So we're servicing many more students than we were in years past. And inflationary costs are a real thing. Heating, renting additional space, but also CUNY has to hire in a national job market. If you're going to get the most talented people to serve our students, you have to be hiring people not just nationally, but even globally. And our salaries just don't do that anymore.
So if enrollment is up by 40% and you can't even attract talent nationwide, you say, I'm going to move to New York and be poor to teach?
And unfortunately, now over half the classes are taught by adjuncts who are receiving these totally dismal wages. We have members who are on food stamps who are teaching our students, and that just seems appalling.
Okay. Now, you brought up the adjunct professors. So what's the difference between the adjunct professor and a full-time tenured professor? And how does that sort of play into this?
Well, all three of us have been adjunct professors. We started our careers off that way, and there was a period where part-time professors was a pathway to full-time teaching, and that largely doesn't exist anymore. A certain number of adjuncts are professionals who just want to come in and teach a class and share something, and that's always been a fantastic addition to the university. But now we have basically a permanent labor force of highly educated, highly talented professors who are unpaid, are largely low paid, have no job security, at best get one-year appointments for a few classes. And the university has really made up the difference in funding by shifting more and more in the teaching onto these low-paid adjuncts.
Right. So, Professor Persinger, if we're looking at the numbers of the people who are a part of the union, what's the breakdown there? Because I was sort of flabbergasted that professors had a union. It's not something you think of.
So we cover both teaching faculty and a category called professional staff, which includes advisors and people in the registrar's office, even some of the people who work in the president's office.
Yeah, everything that keeps the lights on.
Everything that keeps the university going. We call ourselves collectively instructional staff because we are the people who are responsible for instruction, but there's more to instruction than just standing in front of a classroom and giving a lecture.
Gotcha.
So there are about 7,000 of us who are full-time faculty, another 4,000 or so who are in this professional staff category, the counselors, the lab technicians, those things. And so that's 11,000, so that gets like 14,000 who are adjuncts.
So, Professor Majumdar, we've seen people marching in the street for the Fight for 15. Everyone sort of has a very visceral reaction and like, hey, I was 15 before and I wanted that job at McDonald's. How do you rally the public support for you guys when there is that prevailing thought that, oh, it's fat city once you're teaching in a college?
We wish. It's not. That's
Yeah.
the thing. Again, it's important to understand what it is that we are doing. College is the pathway to making a successful career. You know, it's the one shot that most of our students have to come out of circles of poverty and make it into the middle class. And so given that that's the work that we do, we need decent conditions for that. We need people who can do that under conditions where they can devote their time and energy. So when you put that into context and you look at our adjuncts, as Alex said, some of them are on food stamps.
Yeah.
Some of them cannot make rent. So that's the education then, the education that we deliver suffers because of that. So once we make that connection with what it is that we are doing, I think the city will be and is behind us because we are who our students are. That's, you know, that divide should not be overstated ever. So.
Now, I want to go back to November 4th for the strike, well, not the strike, but the protest that the PSC led in front of the headquarters. You know, what is it that you were necessarily trying to accomplish? They came to the table, you rejected the offer. What are the next steps now? And what would a strike of tenured and untenured professors look like?
Well, first of all, there was no
Under the Taylor law, of
there
course.
was no offer until we had the demonstration. It was only because we raised the
outside and it
heat
came down.
that they finally came out with an offer, a totally inadequate offer, but at least they put their cards on the table to some degree. Our members were appalled by the offer. It was a slap in the face. It was, once again, everyone else in the state can have a raise, can have something decent, but not CUNY. That's the way we experience that. It's an assault on us. It's an assault on our students. And so as a result, the union has called for a strike authorization vote of the entire membership. So we're currently in the process of talking to our members at chapter meetings on all the various campuses in preparation for a vote sometime in the future. We haven't set a specific date yet. And that vote would then authorize our union's executive council, which all three of us sit on, to make a decision about the timing and nature of a potential strike action of some kind. We know it's illegal. Our members know it's illegal. So we do not take these steps lightly. There are significant consequences potentially for the union and even for individual members.
What would the ramifications be if you're
Well,
going
for
to be in
individuals,
violation of the act?
for individuals, the Taylor law calls for a sanction of a loss of 2 days additional pay for every day that you take any kind of job action. The union could suffer an injunction that could result in its principal officers going to jail. The loss
That would
of
be
dues.
the three of you among
Well,
others.
the two of them at least, possibly
Okay.
me as well. We'll see. Depends on how the judge is feeling that day, possibly. It could mean a loss of dues check-off. It could mean fines for the union, similar to what happened to the transit workers when they undertook their
Right.
strike in violation of the Taylor law.
You
But
wanted to say?
just say, I think we need to point out, we are a labor union. We are a labor union of professors, but we are a labor union, and
Right.
we think of ourselves in that tradition of labor unions. So withholding your labor is our ultimate weapon. That's the way we can ultimately show our power. And in our situation, it is a violation of a law that most of us think is not correct.
Right.
But sometimes you take actions that are against laws when you think that the consequences of violating the law would be worth what you might gain if you showed your political power that way.
Well, we see what happened in Wisconsin and a few other states where the unions came under fire. I just want to ask you to take off your vice president hat and put on your prof cap for a second. You teach sociology. What do you think the message is to your students who are sitting in a class being taught by someone who's on welfare, getting food stamps, because they're choosing to teach you to go out and possibly do a job that might even bring you back into this system? What impact does that have on young people?
Well, I think
Or
not
students,
enough
not just
of
young
our
folks.
I don't think not enough of our students realize the conditions that our members work under. And in some ways we've tried to shelter them a little bit, to not impose our situation on them. But increasingly when They can't get classes they need. They can't get the advisement they need. We've asked our members, it's time now to involve the students in this conversation, to make them aware of what's going on with funding, with the constant tuition increases that don't really go to the university, et cetera. And there's a lot of sympathy, especially in a sociology classroom, but I think also in a math classroom. Yeah. They view us as signs of success who are there to try to help them. And when they find out that we're getting a raw deal, they not only empathize with us, but I think they take it personally as well. Mm-hmm. You know, I wear a nice jacket to work every day, not for me, I wear it for them to say, this is a professional environment. I take what I do here seriously. I take what you're doing here seriously. Yeah. And the way we're being treated undermines that.
Okay. Okay. And I think we're sort of running out of time here, so I'm going to let you get the last word. You you sent 40,000 postcards to Cuomo to address this issue. What did the postcards say? And what is the message and takeaway that you would like to send to the governor and the mayor?
So those postcards were actually sent by the students. They all had students' names on them and were from students at particular colleges. And they said, the quality of my education is important. It's important that the state funds the quality of my education. And they requested for the governor to sign a specific bill that commits the state to continuing its funding for those basic necessities that Alex talked about, the rents that go up, the electricity that goes up, and instead of, what was not stated explicitly, but what has happened, instead of shifting the funding for those things, for those basic things, onto the students back in terms of increased tuition.
So you're not the math professor, but in the last 5 seconds, is there a magic number, Professor, that you could put on where you guys would be satisfied, a percent or a dollar figure?
Yes, we've asked for 14%, and we think that's reasonable.
All right, that's the last word, 14%.
Yes.
Keep them educated.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.